welcome back once again to College Football Pros. As always, I'm your host, Nick, and I'm joined, as always, by my right-hand man, Drew. Drew, how are we feeling today? What's the good word? What do we got to say?
I'm feeling good about the SEC East today. A lot of people don't want to talk about it, but I'm actually excited to talk about it. I mean, the SEC East, Georgia, that's one of my sleeper teams this year, so let's do it.
So basically what you're saying is we're going to spend 40 minutes talking about Georgia.
It's a possibility. I'm just saying, so we might have to be cut off there, so I'm just saying it's a possibility. Yeah.
So the SEC East for me is almost like the polar opposite of the SEC West. When we were talking about the SEC West, I'm on my computer. I have my notes in front of me because I'm not going to remember what Mississippi's passing defense was ranked. Yeah, I'm not Rain Man. I can't keep all this stuff together like that. So I'm scrolling through the SEC West, and I'm just like, my goodness, like, if the SEC East is like this, I don't know why they even let other teams play college football. Like, they could just have these teams. And then I'm doing my research on the SEC East, and I'm like, Georgia, it is
a realignment. Opposite. A realignment is desperately needed for the SEC.
Yeah, but nonetheless, we're going to do our journalistic duties of doing the best we can and bringing you coverage of all teams, no matter how gut-wrenching the stats might be or the situations might be. And, they're part of the sport we love at the end of the day, and they've all provided us some good moments at some point or another. So they're not without complete it's not a complete downside situation. So today, we'll start with Florida. Last year, Florida had the 106th ranked passing offense, the 43rd ranked rushing offense, the 96th overall offense, the 42nd ranked passing defense, the 13th ranked rushing defense for the 15th ranked defense overall. They scored 30.3 points, and they allowed 21.1 points. When I see stats like this, Drew, I can't make sense of them sometimes. How can you score 30 points a game and be in the bottom 75% of total offense?
Yeah, that is a odd stat. I'm not going to lie to you. That's odd.
So is it the defense scoring the points?
I don't recall them scoring a lot of points.
I don't remember that much about them. Like, I'll be completely honest, I typically watch games that are going to be high scoring or feature the players that I've played who are typically in either good situations or high scoring games, and I did not have a lot of exposure to anybody from Florida this year.
Not at all. I think with Muschamp being gone, they're bringing in a guy from Colorado State. They're going to struggle. I mean, there's just no way to look about it. They have Traylon Harris at quarterback. He's a very athletic quarterback, but he doesn't fit the new coach Jim McEwen's system. So
right.
do you go with Will Grier, who is more of a pocket passer? Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, you have a great athlete in Traylon Harris, and you're not going to utilize him? Question mark?
Right. Yeah, I mean,
not sure what they're going to do there.
It's almost a struggle to understand sometimes why people do the things they do. But nonetheless, it's what we have, and it appears that Will Grier is going to have the opportunity to be the signal caller. Matt Jones is gone. I think he's playing for the Redskins this coming year, which leaves Kelvin Taylor to assume the role of the lead back, which we heard at the beginning of the season last year. If I'm not mistaken, he was supposed to have a huge role, and that never materialized. The O-line doesn't look great. So I'm trying to figure out how this team is going to score points right now, Drew.
Yeah, I don't know. And I think Kelvin Taylor might get beat out again by Jordan Scarlett, who is a kid out of South Florida that's going to come in and probably take that job real quick. Wide receiver DeMarcus Robinson.
Only bright spot.
That was just going to say is literally the only guy. The only guy. Tight end Jake McGee. Okay. Where else? I mean, there are just a ton of issues on the outside there, which should never happen for Florida. They should have talent and speed everywhere, and they don't.
I would not be surprised to see DeMarcus Robinson go over the century mark.
Yeah.
And hit, or the millennium mark, I guess it would be. I guess it wouldn't be the century mark.
I mean, he can hit the century mark in every game.
I don't think that's going to happen.
I mean, I'm just saying it's possible.
I see him around.
I was trying to move through that mistake you made, but you kind of went back to it, so it's okay.
I'll call myself out when I boo-boo. It's going to happen at least once an episode. But if here's the deal I want to make with you, Drew. What you need to do is you need to be quick and witty. I've determined and you've determined we need more wit on the show.
Cool.
And what we need to do is when somebody makes a mistake, the other needs to be quick enough to just hit them with something that makes them look so stupid before they could possibly respond back to it. I think our listeners would really like that. So let's just put that out on the line and just be expecting it, because if you mess up, I'm going to do the same thing.
Absolutely.
But I think he could end up with over 1,000 yards and 10 scores, and that would account for 90% of the offense.
Yeah. And and my question becomes, if you bench Treon Harris, do you put him at receiver? Do you maybe try to utilize his athletic ability somehow? Or do you just sit him?
I don't know. It seems like it just seems like logic would dictate if a guy could do multiple things, even if it doesn't fit your scheme entirely, it seems like it will be to the betterment of your overall situation. So you'd want to get him involved somehow. If he ends up on the bench, I mean, I don't know how likely people are to just being willing to say, okay, you know what, if I'm not going to play this position, I'm fine with playing this other one. It's a discussion we're going to have, and we've had in the past with Terrell Pryor. He's not going to play quarterback in the NFL.
No.
So do you put him at tight end or wide receiver and say, okay, learn this for your last year? They might not be that willing to do that. You just don't know. Go ahead.
I was to say the one thing we do know is their defense was top 10 the past 4 seasons under Muschamp. That's when a team can't score any points, and for a defense to be in the top 10 the past 4 years, that's pretty impressive. And Muschamp is a defensive guy, so that's why that happens. And probably one of the best cornerbacks, defensive backs in the nation, and Vernon Hargraves III returns, all SEC guy. Going to be a top 5 pick. I mean, what do you think?
Yeah, I think the defensive production could still be there. It may be even slightly better, but what does it matter if you can't score?
Absolutely.
I can't foresee a situation where they score 30.3 points on average in a game. I just don't see it unless the defense is scoring half of that.
Yeah. The defense has to score points. That's bad to say, because if your offense is putting up 7 points a game and your defense is putting up 14 points a game, on the offensive side of the ball, that does not bode well.
I mean, look, we could be completely wrong. They could go out there and just everything could come together, and more power to them, but it does not seem like that. So moving along, we'll go to the team that we both think is pretty much going to sleep its way into the SEC East title role, and that's Georgia. Yep. And last year, they had the 90th ranked passing offense, the 12th ranked rushing offense, 30th ranked overall offense, 5th ranked passing defense, 63rd ranked rushing defense, 17th ranked overall defense. They scored the 8th most points in the country on average in 41.3, and they allowed 20.7. And I know you're excited, and I'm excited. And why are we excited?
Nick Chubb.
There's no doubt about it. I mean, this kid came in when Gurley went down, and he was just a monster again and again and again and again. And when you thought that he was finally put in a situation where he was against a team that by statistics and by the eye test he wasn't going to translate well again to, he runs a 67-yard touchdown in.
Yeah, I mean, he rushed for 1,500 yards last year as a true freshman. Gurley was supposed to be the guy, and he was the guy until legal issues with the NCAA, which was a complete crock, banged up a little bit, yada, 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 yada. We all know what happened. Sony Michel, Keith Marshall, 2 other really good running backs that can take some carries away from him, but I think Nick Chubb is far and away the number 1 guy down there.
Yeah, I think you're a little higher on those other 2 guys than I am. I don't think that they're without talent. That's not the direction I'm going. I just see it being a situation where they're going to let Nick Chubb play. If they want to stay relevant and look, they've got the easier half of the conference. I mean, that's insulting to 6 other teams, but it's also true. If he performs strong and they're sitting in the SEC title game, they might have a situation where they haven't lost. and he's going to be a major part of it.
Yeah, I mean, schedule-wise, the only two hiccups that I see is they play Bama. It's cross. They play Bama at home and at Auburn. I mean, that doesn't bode well for anybody. But their 4 out-of-conference games are laughable. UL Monroe, Southern, Georgia Southern, and Georgia Tech. That's laughable.
Yeah, I mean, Nick Chubb might break the record for rushing in one of those games.
Yeah.
I mean, it's realistic and possible. Hudson Mason is out. He looks to be replaced by Bryce Ramsey. Look, I'm going to save all the rhetoric here. Georgia's going to run the ball. That's what they do. But I think he could potentially be a serviceable distraction. This is what we were kind of talking about with LSU. You know, you have good running backs, but unless you really have somebody that's able to make the defense believe that there's an alternative to the running game, you're dead in the water. And they have lost their top 2 receivers, including Chris Conley.
Yeah.
They will have some inexperienced quarterback play, but ultimately they have such a strong running game that they can afford to run 3 downs and just hand the ball off again and again and again. This is going to be an exciting year to watch this team.
Yeah, Georgia's going to be a fun team. And, you know, with Bryce Ramsey or Faton Batua, whoever might, you know, be the quarterback, Malcolm Mitchell, you know, on the outside is a guy that he is a first-round draft pick. All the injuries, man, they're going to start racking up on him. But if he can stay healthy and have a breakout season, this team could be ranked at the end of the season. We might be talking about them with that running game, maybe in the Final Four. It's not likely, but it is possible.
I'll tell you right now, I did just read that Mitchell said he's not going to be a two-way player anymore.
No,
so if he's just going to stick on the offensive side of the ball, that's going to be a huge upgrade. But like you said, it's going to be it's the injury situation. If that's what I think made look, you have a decent quarterback who could throw to a good receiver in Chris Conley. Oh, look, it opens up the opportunity for a guy like Nick Chubb to go crazy because teams have to be honest with Chris Conley. They have to be honest with Hudson Mason. They're not going to just say, well, we know that this isn't going to result in anything. We don't think that this guy has enough talent. No, they know they have to watch them because they could make stuff happen if they're lackadaisical on them.
Yeah, absolutely. And bringing in Brian Schottenheimer as a new offensive coordinator, you know, does that NFL pedigree translate to college football? I'm interested to see how that works out because he has a lot of weapons on offense.
What do you think about the defense?
Jeremy Pruitt, defensive coordinator, one of the best in college football right now. Probably going to be looked at as a head coach very, very soon. Should have been already probably, but this is a guy that has a lot of potential on defense to be better and to be one of the nation's best. But they bring in the number 1 overall recruit, Trent Thompson. That defensive line was already good, but now they're going to get even better. So I'm really excited for that defensive line in particular. So I don't know.
I think this they definitely have an opportunity to keep the teams off of the scoreboard even more. I'm looking for a points allowed of sub 20, and they were already good at 20.7.
Yeah, absolutely. And you bring in another year.
They could float at the 18.5, 19 mark in this coming year, and that puts them into the top 10, I believe, in the country in the amount of points that are being allowed. And I don't see any reason for there to be a loss in overall offensive production. If you had just one player to watch on this team, who would it be?
You know, I want to say Chubb, but I think that's going to be what everybody says. So I'm going to say Malcolm Mitchell. I'm going to say if he can stay healthy and if he can be there at the end of the season, I think this team is really, really good.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to say Nick Chubb. If I had to take someone other than him on this team, though, I would probably say Nick Chubb. Honestly, though, if you pressed me for someone to watch really from Georgia, I would have to say it's going to be Nick Chubb.
Yeah, I mean, you can say
there's not going to be
that's fine.
There's going to be no doubt in my mind that we're going to be talking about this kid at the end of the year.
Nah, I mean, like I said, if you want to mention what everybody else in the nation says, that's fine. You don't want your own opinion. That's fine.
No, I'm fine. There's very few situations where I go out of my way to agree with everyone else, but he's a dynamic athlete, and I'm not going to sit here and pretend I think anything different. There's times where I'll absolutely look at something that someone suggests. Like a lot of people were saying that Devontae Booker is going to be a sleeper player. How does somebody who everybody knows about, how are they going to be a sleeper player? How does that work exactly?
Yeah, I don't get that at all.
So let me tell you, who else? I think Dak Prescott. I think he's got a huge opportunity to be a sleeper player. Ezekiel Elliott, he's a guy who could potentially. I'm not doing that. Jordan Howard, that's a sleeper player. Even though Jordan Howard was ranked 7th in yards per game last year at UAB, and he goes to a better opportunity in Indiana, he's still a sleeper because nobody really knows about UAB.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean? He's going to go in there, and they're going to say, oh, that's a guy not named Tevin Coleman.
Yeah.
I got it right this time. I didn't call him a 90s R&B singer.
Absolutely. I'm very proud of you, actually.
You should be. We should just end the podcast on that, but we're not going to.
We could.
We're going to go to Kentucky. And we're going to talk about Kentucky, and if we really wanted to have excitement, we'd talk about the Kentucky basketball team, but that's not what we're here doing. Kentucky had the 64th ranked passing offense, the 79th ranked rushing offense, for an overall offense of 82nd in the country. The 44th ranked passing defense, the 91st ranked rushing defense, for an overall defense of 77th. They scored 29.2 points per game, and they allowed 31.3, which, to anyone with an eyeball or two, that's not a good ratio.
No, Mark Stoops has got to get better in all aspects of the game, and I think he's a good coach. I think he has potential to turn his team around, but in a conference like the SEC, wow, you need some playmakers, you need a couple guys, you need some momentum, and I don't know. I like their quarterback and Patrick Towles. However, I don't even know if he's going to start. They might go with Drew Barker.
Yep.
So at the end of the day,
So here's my problem.
Wow.
I'm going to jump in to where we're typically talking about at the end of the school. And who's my player to watch on this team? It's their linebacker, Josh Forrest. And it's no disrespect what I'm about to say to defensive players, but we're a fantasy-related podcast at the end of the day. One of our underlying goals, aside from providing analysis on teams and games and situation, is to provide, when I'm trying to tell you a player to watch, I'm really trying to say this person should have some good production in a fantasy perspective. Like, put him on a piece of paper. Some of these things we're telling you, they're givens. Nick Chubb is a given, but if I look at a team and I have to suggest a kicker or a linebacker, there's some serious problems there in terms of how this team is going. And I like Towles. I don't know what it is, but either way, if you're in a position where you don't know if you're going to be the starting quarterback come week one, it's not a good situation. He had a few good games in the middle of the year. Everything else was wildly inconsistent. Going on another step, they were, this whole team to me is just nothing's exciting. There's just nothing exciting. When's the last time they had a running back go for over 500 yards? 500 yards.
Just crickets, not sure.
It's been a while, and so you're getting excited over Stanley Williams being the guy who's finally going to break 500 yards for the team?
Yeah. I mean, he did have 3 touchdown runs of 50 yards or more. I mean, that's a good thing, right?
He had 5 touchdown runs.
Hey, man, I'm just trying to look at the positive here for Kentucky.
I see what you
give their fan base some due.
So let's look at the wide receivers.
Yeah.
No, I'm asking you. Let's look at the wide receivers.
You look at Ryan Timmons, 874 career yards.
Is that career yards or how many he had last season?
No, that's career yards.
Right.
So, I mean, let's be fair. Let's call a spade a spade. They're going to struggle.
It's going to be
all aspects of the game.
It's going to be tough for them. They need to improve on defense. I think they will improve on defense, but ultimately something needs to give with the offense. There's inconsistent and low production on the offense, and at the end of the day, whether you're on either side of the SEC, if you're not scoring points, you're not getting the job done.
Yeah, they have problems recruiting. Yeah, I mean, Kentucky high school football isn't at the level of other SEC programs, so they're going to struggle off the field recruiting and on the field with the talent. So, and that
Look,
sucks because I like the Stoops and the family, Bob, Mark, Mike. I think they're good coaches. I just think he's in a bad position right now.
Yeah, it's not an ideal position for him to be in. I couldn't agree more. And I'm not trying to drizzle all over the program, and I'm not trying to demean it, but like you said, sometimes you just have to call a spade a spade. You can't sit in a position and try to paint a rosy outlook on a situation that just isn't rosy.
Not at all.
So moving along, we'll go to Missouri. This, in my opinion, is another one of those teams that's going to be very interesting to talk about. Their passing offense was ranked 101, which, look, if you watched that team in 2013, you know that their passing offense should not have been ranked 101. We'll get back to that in a second. Rushing offense was ranked 55th. Overall, they came in with a 98th ranked offense. The defense was a different story. They had the 40th ranked passing defense, the 26th ranked rushing defense, and the 23rd ranked overall defense. Here's a troubling statistic. They scored 27.8 points. But on the good side of things, they only allowed 21.1. So
not a lot of margin for error.
It's really not. So for me to start with, I have to talk about Matty Mock.
Yeah.
Because when James Franklin was hurt in 2013, right, Mock came in, and I remember this because this is really when I started playing the college football daily fantasy, and Mock was a minimum priced quarterback who had a good situation. And was that the first year they were in the SEC, or am I insane?
Yeah, it was.
It was. So 13 was the first year. I think that's what it was. I can't remember.
Because they'd been in the league 2 years ago. This is their third year in the SEC.
All right. So, yeah, I played him like weeks at a time until Franklin came back, and he always did well. Mm-hmm. And when, obviously when Franklin was done at the end of 2013, I had so much hope for Matty Mock and this team. And, I mean, it did kind of start to spiral out of control, the whole program, basically, because Green Beckham was suspended or...
Yeah. Whatever happened.
I'm not quite sure I'm not quite sure exactly what the situation was. So there was a black eye on the team walking into the season, but still, I expected so much out of Matty Mock, and I watched probably the first 4 games because I used to use him, and it was bad.
Mm-hmm.
And now, to his defense, by the end of the year, he had really turned things around.
Oh, he was definitely resilient towards the end of the season.
And so my hope is that coming into this year, we'll see more of that 2013 version than we did early 2014 of Matty Mock.
Yeah, absolutely. And the big question mark for me is who's he going to have to throw to? Losing your top 3 receivers. The guys they have coming back have a combined 10 career catches. 5 of those are from one individual, and that is sophomore Nate Brown. So who's he going to throw the ball to?
Interestingly enough, I read a statistic that this was the exact same situation they went into last year.
Yeah, which is not good though.
Well,
you don't want to.
So let's analyze that, and from a fantasy perspective, do you feel comfortable in saying that you should probably not look at Matty Mock for the first couple of weeks?
Yeah, not early for sure. I'd stay far away from him early.
Yeah. I think that they'll have... Look, I think Missouri is probably a place that people would want to play. I think that they've probably... I'm not sure overall what I saw in terms of how high their talent was of the oncoming receivers. But regardless, it's problematic when you're not returning your top 4 receivers. Now, on the flip side of things... The offensive line, I believe, will have improved somewhat. Do you think more of the emphasis is going to be on Russell Hansbrough this year?
Yeah, hands down. You have to have a running back he scored 10 touchdowns last year, so he can definitely eclipse that double-digit mark. Returning all 5 offensive linemen will definitely help that scenario. But my question is there anybody behind him to spell him? Can somebody step up and then a backup role where, you can not give him the ball 150 times a game? You know what I mean?
I think there's enough guys who can play a few downs. They could play a few snaps a game. I think it's a committee at that point. I don't think there's a situation like occurs at many other schools, like, for example, Alabama, where Kenyon Drake is there that can reliably step in for Derrick Henry 25% of the game.
Exactly. And if they can have that, and if Hansborough can take some time off and heal, in between, downs and come back and healthy, I think this kid is going to, he may clip the 1,500 mark.
Yeah, right now I have him at about 1,312. I think that's fair.
Yeah.
All things considered. I believe he was around like 1,010 last year.
Yeah, 1,084 and 10 touchdowns, yeah.
All right, so I think it's fair to say that he should see an uptick in production around that. Would I be shocked at the end of the year if he hits 1,500? No. Will I be shocked with any more than that? Probably.
Yeah.
I think
right.
This is a program that's definitely in an interesting position. You hope that the talent that's coming in this year gels better with Matty Mock than the receivers did at the beginning last year. And who knows, that might not even be the case. It might have been something mental with Mock, and he just had some things to work out. But overall, I do think that Mock has an opportunity to really right his wrongs this year. On the defensive side of things, where do you sit with this Missouri defense?
They lost their defensive coordinator in Missouri State. So right then and there, you're going to have a new guy come in. And, he was an in-house guy, so the players know him. But the defensive line is very inexperienced. However, the linebacking core is where it's the strength of this defense is the linebacking core. So I think if the linebackers can hold the defensive line in place so that line can gel, I think this defense has potential to be pretty much on par as to what it was last year, even though they brought in a defensive coordinator.
Yeah, I'm going to echo your sentiments on that. In terms of the player I want to watch, do you have anyone other than Matty Mock or Russell Hansborough?
Nah, for me it's Mock, honestly.
Yeah, I think he's the most intriguing to watch just because he's going to have the ball in his hands so many times, and we know that he's been prone to some less than ideal performances, so it's really going to be on him to work past that. Moving from Missouri, we will go to South Carolina. South Carolina had the 22nd ranked passing offense, the 67th ranked rushing offense, and the 35th ranked overall offense. They had the 53rd ranked passing defense, the 107th ranked rushing defense, and the 94th ranked overall defense. They scored 32.6 points a game, but gave up 30.4. So,
yeah, they 7-6 last year.
This is another program, man.
Yeah, with Spurrier at the helm.
First of all, let's talk about last year. And do you remember who they played the first game of the season?
No, I don't actually.
Thursday night football game.
Was that the Clemson game?
No, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that was the game where Kenny Hill blew up.
Oh, yeah.
Am I wrong on that?
I don't have the last year's schedule in front of me.
Let me double check, but I'm 95% sure because the fantasy community was abuzz with what Dylan Thompson was bringing to the table in that game, and was basically all over him. And the reality was, that's the game. They lost 52-28. That was the game that Kenny Trill, blew onto the scene, and he eventually blew out of the scene. But that was kind of the writing on the wall for the program, because it started out with a sense of them being, I don't know if saying them being a contender, but I think that they thought that it was going to be a legitimate opportunity for them to take the next step.
Yeah, I mean they finished up 7-6, 3-5 in the SEC. They're worst since 2009. And under Spurrier, who is a legendary coach, I don't want to sit here and say the game has passed Spurrier by, but he's quickly approaching that Bobby Bowden, Joe Paterno realm of it may be time to step away. And that's taking nothing away from Spurrier, a legendary career Hall of Famer, without a doubt. However, I think it might be getting close to that time. And I know he said he's going to stick around for a couple more years, but I don't know if I think this team has plateaued. And by that, I mean middle of the road SEC. They're not going to get much better than that, in my honest opinion, especially with the fact that I've heard rumblings that Farrell Cooper might be the quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, when I saw that and I was doing my research and just looking at what this team looked like,
even if it's for packages, he's your best receiver, your best athlete. You have to have a quarterback. I mean, just put Connor Mitch out there and just let him throw the ball to Farrell Cooper. Everybody knows it's going to happen, so just let him do it, right?
I really don't know what to say. I'm really a little bit shocked that they didn't have a continuity plan in place for what happens after Dylan Thompson, or maybe they did and it just didn't materialize. But Farrell Cooper has the most active pass attempts of anyone on the roster.
Yeah,
I mean, I've heard rumblings, just as you have, that it's a very real conversation that's taking place. And he was basically the only returning receiver on the team. Other than the running backs, they returned one starter who caught a touchdown last year. Yeah,
that's not good. That's not good at all.
At this point, I can't see this being a top 100 offense.
Yeah, unless Brandon Wilds can really break out. They have a sophomore, David Williams. So if those guys can really take that next step, I think this offense has potential. But they need to find a quarterback that's not Farrell Cooper, and they need Farrell Cooper to have to eclipse that 1,500-yard mark. So it's going to be an issue, real big issue.
It is absolutely bothersome. If you're a South Carolina fan, I don't feel like you can go into this season with a ton of confidence. Just putting it bluntly.
No, and the defense it leads me to believe that less confidence, is out there because their defense just needs so many issues. You can't even say anybody. Last year they jumped from, different looks, on the defensive front with a 4-2 defense, 4-2-5 defense to a 3-4 to a 4-3 they ran so many different defenses. This year, they're going to stick to a 4-3 base defense. So maybe that'll be more continuity on the defensive side of the ball, but man, they need to improve.
My takeaways are, I think that the defense stands to perform better. It's one of those situations. Yes, it's almost like you can't statistically perform worse.
I mean, they had 14 sacks last year. That was 118th with 14 sacks. That can't happen.
The biggest problem for me becomes they've scored 32.6 points per game.
Yeah.
That's not bad.
No.
With the lineup they have now, that's not attainable.
No.
So you're going to
24
score
to 25 points at most.
And
yeah.
You've given up 30.4 points.
Yeah.
And I think that however much better the defense got, it's not equivalent to how much worse the offense got.
Absolutely.
So I think that's a major problem. In South Carolina, I don't have them on the winning side of things. I have them, honestly, I probably have them right above Vanderbilt.
Wow. I mean, I got Carolina on 7-5.
I think I'd have them above Kentucky. And
yeah, I mean, I would too, but I mean, I still have them have a winning record, 7-5, going bowling, in a smaller bowl.
I don't know, man. This team's bereft of options.
Who is your player to watch? I mean, is it Farrah Cooper? Is it anybody? I mean, can it be anybody else?
It's not an option to be. I can't. And unfortunately and sadly, I can't name another person that I would honestly be willing to consider. Most of these schools have several options that you can say, well, I could make the case here to watch this guy. I don't feel that way when I'm talking about South Carolina.
No, they're going to struggle this year. I mean, they just really will, and it's sad because South Carolina is, it is a fun program to watch, but this year might be struggle.
It might be fun to watch what other teams do to them.
Yeah, and maybe that's a better way to put it. Absolutely.
Moving along, we will go to Tennessee, who had the 71st ranked passing offense, the 92nd ranked rushing offense, the 93rd ranked overall offense, the 23rd ranked passing defense, the 67th ranked rushing defense, and the 37th ranked overall defense. They scored 28.9 points per game on average, and they gave up 24.2 points. My first instincts when I look at these statistics were with the performances that I think Joshua Dobbs, Pig Howard, Marquez North, and Jalen Hurd are capable of, they are not going to repeat this type of performance in 2015.
So you see them taking a big step back?
No. I'm saying they were the 93rd overall offense. I'm saying I see them in the top 40.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah. Butch Jones, this is an improving team. They went from 5-7 to 7-6. It's not a huge jump, but if they can take another jump to 8-5, whatever it might be, whatever that case might be, if they get more wins, this team has the potential to play spoiler to a lot of teams.
Yeah, they do, and like I illustrated, I'm a big fan of this Tennessee offense, and I don't know when the last time someone would have honestly said something like that. Joshua Dobbs is a solid contributor across different platforms with what he does. He can run the ball, he can throw the ball, he's elusive, he's got speed, he's tough, and he's smart. Those are the characteristics you want when you're talking about the quarterback position. And then the biggest thing is they return an obnoxious amount of receivers. I think they return their top 7 receivers. I don't know if any other team in the country returns that many offensive skill position players.
No, absolutely. They have talent on offense. It's just I think you're a little more you're higher on them than I am. However, with that being said, I think they have a lot of talent with Jalen Hurd and Alvin Kamara in the backfield. That's a dynamic duo. Yeah, but like you said about the receivers, they bring back a plethora of experience and guys that can really go deep and good route runners, got good hands. But can you keep Josh Dobbs healthy with that offensive line? That's the bigger issue to me.
I think that they're returning enough starts in the offensive line that there should be some improvement. But, the downside to any player like Dobbs, like Prescott, like Boykin, is they play a somewhat dangerous style of football. And when you're running and you're absorbing those hits, look, the average quarterback isn't built to take hits like that. If you think about an average game with a drop back passer, they're not getting hit as much as the guys who are dropping back and running. So inevitably, these guys are getting banged up more, and you're more likely to get injured the more you get hit. That's just a common sense. It doesn't take much more than saying that to figure that out, right?
No, absolutely. I just also feel that, their offensive line gave up 305 yards to sacks last year. You can't expect to duplicate that, and with Josh Dobbs being back there every single time, he's going to get hurt. Yeah, that offensive line, I understand that they return more starts, but you got to get better. You have to.
Yeah, I have a lot of faith in this program. I think, just like you said, they're in a position where they could play spoiler to a lot of teams. They are in the weaker half of the conference. I don't know that I necessarily see them being a better team than Georgia, but sometimes you don't have to be the better team. You just have to be in the better situation.
Or you just have to be the better team on one day. And then when they play Georgia, if they're that better team that one day, it's all that matters.
That is. What do you think about their defense?
That's an issue to me. The defensive line is the biggest returning, experience and potential. 21 sacks from Derek Bennett and Curtis Magat. I can't pronounce his last name. I apologize. So you return those guys with 21 sacks. So, but other than that, their defensive backfield is a big question mark. Their leading tackler is back, so that's a good thing. But they're going to be, if their offense is as potent as you think it's going to be, and if they're up in a lot of games, their defensive backfield is going to be a big issue to me.
Okay. Well, that's definitely something that we have to pay attention to. Who's your player that you're watching on this team?
There's a lot of guys that actually, which is interesting to say since we're talking about Tennessee, but I think Jalen Hurd is a guy that is going to be a breakout guy and an individual that can really put up some numbers alongside Josh Dobbs.
Yep. Absolutely no disagreement from me there. Moving along to our final team, we are going to talk about Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt ended the season last year 107th in passing offense, 116th in rushing offense, 125th in overall offense, which is the fourth worst in the country, 50th passing defense, 88th rushing defense, 70th overall defense. They scored 17.2 points a game, which is the 10th fewest in the country, and they allowed 33.3 points. Do we have another situation with some of these other teams we've talked about, like Kentucky, like South Carolina, where it's a team that is in shambles isn't the best way to put it, but they're just not clicking?
They scored 9 touchdowns in 8 SEC games last year.
Yeah, you can't do that.
You can't do that in any conference, especially the SEC. Their leading pass catcher from last year, who's a tight end, he broke his leg in the spring. They don't know if he's going to play this year, or at least the first half of the season. This team is just, I don't know, a dumpster fire. I don't, and I mean that in the nicest way, because I know Vanderbilt, some people that from Vanderbilt. So I mean that in the nicest way, but damn. They're going to struggle. If they win 2 games in the SEC, I'll be surprised.
Yeah, I mean, to me, the only bright spot that I feel on this team could be Ralph Webb. I think with somewhat of an improved offensive line, he had 900 yards and 4 scores last year. Yeah. It's not awful. When you're talking about the fact that there was such little production, that's not awful statistics to have. I mean, I think he could break 1,000 yards and maybe double his touchdown production in the right circumstance. But overall, the team is really a mess, and I think their defense could improve a little bit, but I'm talking like a little bit. The biggest thing, Drew, at the end of the day is you can't allow 33.3 points to SEC teams unless you're scoring 40, and they're not scoring half of that.
Yeah, I mean, I think this team will get better. I mean, but better means 2 to 3 wins. I don't know. Statistically, I feel like they can get better, but I don't see a big improvement for this team this year.
No, if you have to pick one team at the end of the season that has their hand raised, who is it in the SEC East?
Georgia. I think it's Georgia by a long shot, and then the rest of the conference is just kind of there.
Yeah, I can't disagree. I think there's a slim percentage for me that says a team like Tennessee or Missouri could possibly.
Tennessee could definitely play spoiler. I just don't see how they beat Georgia.
Right.
I really don't with Mark Richt, Nick Chubb.
I'm with you.
Marshall.
If I had to qualify it, I'd say 80%. I'd say probably 90% Georgia, 7% Tennessee, and 3% Missouri, and that's as far as I'd go with it.
Yeah, couldn't agree more.
But Drew, where can we find you if we have any questions, concerns, or just want to bother you in general?
You can do all those things. Follow me on Twitter at CFBPros Drew. Where can we find you and send all of the hate mail that we're going to be sending your way? Where are we going to send it to?
We can send it to at CFBPros on Twitter, or you can find us on Facebook at College Football Pros. Finally, you can find us on the interwebs at www.cfbpros.com. Do you have anything else you want to close with today, Drew?
I'm just extremely excited for this season to begin. I'm extremely excited to watch the SEC in a conference that I feel is not going to have a team in the college football playoff. So send the tweets, send the emails, send everything. Let's do it.
All right, Drew. Well, I'm going to be the first person to do that. We look forward to talking about some of the other conferences coming up in the next few episodes. We'll see you then.